good memories. And that's what I tell my family day in and day out. Cherish your memories. You'll live longer.
Welcome to Memories of Skippack through the eyes of longtime Skippack residents. We're going to open it up. If anybody has any stories they'd like to tell, we have the microphone. We're going to pass that around. And then after stories, we'll have a question and answer.
Well, anyway, this is a house we lived in, and it had 14 rooms, and half of them were so cold you couldn't live in them. Then this is a picture of the Mennonite church that is right above where the house was. And I remember one man by the name of Jacob Landis. He went around and collected money to keep the church, and he had to give it back because the board or whoever they were decided they weren't going to keep the church. He wanted it for a usage of summer Bible school and some other things. He thought it was an antique and should keep it. But they took it down and they put a brick church. Oh, well, this is our wonderful Creamery school. And I went there in 1932, and in 1932, there's some kids standing out in front. We always had pictures taken there. But this one picture is of the kids from 8th grade. And when we had an 8th grade graduation, it was to be held at Holman Grove. And one of these ladies is named Holman here. And Holman Grove was the big thing. You took a hike down there every spring and walked all around the road. This is a picture of the kids that graduated from 8th grade. Now, I don't know, I never counted them. How many are there? That's 1940.
The house that I was born in, where I lived all my younger days, was originally a shoe factory. Anyone ever heard that? Right on 113, just a couple of steps up from the pond that we had there. Anyhow, that's where I was born. How many are acquainted with the creamery? You know where it is? You know what the functions it had? And before my days, there was no pond there. Ever seen the pond? Okay. That's a man-made pond. The pond at the creamery. They scooped it out and made the pond out. And the pond is fairly big. It's pear-shaped. Now the reason they did that, there was no refrigeration. The only thing people had was ice. So they made this pond to manufacture ice or get the ice that would freeze. Now in order to do that, they had to have an ice house. So there was an ice house northwest of the pond. I don't know,
That's right.
the biggest production in the creamery was butter. So they had to have some way of refrigeration.
Can you talk about the trolley?
Oh yeah.
Where was it?
Where was it? Okay, my dad worked on that. My dad worked on a freight car. It ran from Harleysville to Norristown. You go down to Harleysville at the big corner. There's a hotel on the side.
Yeah.
Traffic light. That was the end of the line there.
Okay.
And then it ran down, it came out and went down through Lead Rock. All the way down what is now 113, down to 73 and there, around the corner, like that, and right down through the main street in Skippack. And I believe, even to this day, I believe the piers down the Skippack Creek now I'm talking about, when the tracks crossed the Skippack Creek, there were cement piers that took it up off. I think they're still there, the piers. That's where it went. And went on down through Cedars, all the way down into Worcester, what they call Center Point then.
One of the great things down through Skippack, on mischief night was to knock over the outside toilets. So in the morning after mischief night, you'd go down through town and see all the outhouses on their side.
Creamery School had two toilets, one for the boys, one for the girls. And the mischief night, that was the end of the girls. So the next day, guess what? I don't know where the boys went, but the girls were allowed to use the boys.
I came to Skippack a little bit later than some of my comrades up here, but I came in '36, and I guess I left to go into service in '51. So I can talk a little bit about that period. I lived with my grandmother and aunt at the intersection of 173 and 13. But to talk about the community for a moment, I'd say all the activities hinged around the firehouse and the church. And you had suppers, you had bingo parties, you had card parties, and during the war, if I recall correctly, on a weekly basis there were movies in the firehouse. Well, we may have had dances. Well, I was too young for that, probably. But I mean, that's basically what the focus of the community was. I'd say probably 90 or 95% of the community was all agriculture, and very few of us had the opportunity to go on to school. We went to work. In terms of bean store, I was just a kid, but I used to come in there with my aunt maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. But there was always there was the potbelly stove in the center of the store, which heated the store. But there was always a group of gentlemen sitting around the potbelly stove with a few spittoons around and smoking cigars and chewing tobacco and telling stories. And that was a common occurrence. So I guess like a meeting place. Maybe you can address that.
I remember my mother didn't have any bread to pack lunch one evening or one morning, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to make out. I don't have any bread." And this is the truth. We had a dog outside, and they used to deliver the bread real early in the morning to be stored on the porch.
Yeah.
The dog brought a loaf of bread.
Answer the prayer.
Yeah.
But basically in the 30s, you knew everybody in the community. You really did. And you know, and they knew everything you did as well. Dave Dambley's, who was Mrs. Dambley to you?
Sarah.
That was called my Aunt Sarah. She was Harry Dambley's wife.
Okay.
He was the printer.
Well, Sarah would call up on a Monday or a Tuesday, all the neighbors in town, and well, did you have anybody visiting this week, or what did you do exciting? And you'd read that in the paper the next week. Talking about Evansburg Road and Skippack Creek, as you went back Evansburg Road from 73, there was a dirt road that went back in to a little cabin back there. And I think the gentleman who owned the cabin came from the city because he wasn't there very often. But somehow that became a spot where a number of us guys we'd begin to go fishing, but it became to be a swimming hole where we'd go skinny dipping quite a bit back in there.
We came down there one time, we were all sunning ourselves in the weeds,
Yeah.
and then these boys all come down in there and, oh, mackerel.
I may have been one of them.